At Thanksgiving, my mother tapped her glass, smiling the way she always did when she wanted the whole room to look at Emily. Her wedding was beautiful, Miriam said loudly, proudly, like she was announcing the winner of a pageant. So, Jenna, when's yours? A few people laughed. My father, Thomas, kept carving the turkey like it was urgent work he couldn't look up from. Emily didn't say a word. She just watched me, too still, too careful. That alone told me she already knew where this was going. I set my fork down. I already had mine, I said. You got invitations. The room dropped into a silence so sharp it felt like a physical blow. My dad whispered, "We never got them." So I reached into my bag, and that's when everything they'd been hiding for years finally surfaced. Growing up in Savannah, I learned early that my family loved symmetry. Perfect photos, perfect milestones, perfect stories to tell other people. And in every single one of those stories, Emily was the center. I wasn't bitter about it as a kid. I just assumed that was how families worked. One child shined, the other made room. By the time we were teenagers, the pattern wasn't a pattern anymore. It was a structure, a system. My mother curated Emily's life like it was a new showroom collection. Dance classes, pageants, cheer tryouts, a whole gallery of awards hung down the hallway like a curated museum. Whenever I had my own moments, science fair ribbons, scholarships, a college acceptance, Marianne would smile politely and ask if she could take the picture later because she needed good light for Emily's new headshots. I didn't break the cycle. I adapted to it. I got good at watching, learning, anticipating, and I got even better at surviving quietly. Charlotte changed me, though. Moving 3 hours north to North Carolina for work wasn't rebellion, it was oxygen. I built a life, a small apartment with tall windows, stacks of environmental research notes everywhere, shirts that always smelled faintly of the coffee Cole made every morning. My job analyzing water system data wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. It made sense. And Cole, he saw me in ways my own family never even attempted. He listened. He remembered things. He paid attention. His family noticed me too, not because I performed for them, but because they cared. The first time his mother, Rosa, hugged me, she didn't let go immediately the way Marianne did, like she was done checking a box. She held me, warm and certain. She asked about my work. She remembered specifics. His dad did too. They weren't perfect people, but they were present, and that was new. So when Cole proposed on a foggy June morning by the water at Lake Norman, I said yes without hesitation. We didn't want a grand production. We chose a small chapel near the shoreline, invited only the people who truly knew us, kept everything simple and real. The only thing I wished for, quietly, stubbornly, was that my parents and Emily would show up, that maybe, for once, they'd choose me. I designed the invitations myself, had them printed early and mailed them with signature required, because I knew my family's habit of misplacing anything that didn't revolve around Emily. I triple-checked addresses. I refreshed tracking numbers like it was a ritual. When everything showed delivered, I let myself breathe. Then the silence came. No calls, no texts, not even a casual "congrats" in the family group chat. Weeks passed, the wedding passed, and still nothing. I told myself 100 stories to keep from facing the truth. Maybe the mail got mixed up. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe they were waiting for the right moment. But deep down, a colder thought grew roots. Someone didn't want those invitations seen, and I didn't know how painfully right I was until the night of Thanksgiving. The silence after the wedding didn't just sit there, it expanded, seeped into every corner of my life like a slow leak. At first, I waited. People get busy, I told myself. They'll call, they'll text, they'll at least ask why we never got an invitation. But days became weeks, and the quiet became something tighter, something intentional. I tried reaching out. A call to Marianne went to voicemail. A message to Thomas got a polite "I'll call later," which never came. The group chat, the one we'd had since college, no longer showed my name in it. I wasn't removed loudly, I was erased quietly. I mentioned it to Cole one night while we were washing dishes, trying to sound casual. Maybe it's a glitch, I said, though my voice betrayed me. Cole dried his hands, looked at me gently, and asked, Jenna, did they ever respond to the invitations at all? I shook my head. Not once. He didn't accuse, he didn't push. He just said, let's check the logs. He helped me navigate through the email activity records, something I never would have known how to do alone. And there it was, the access logs for the family account. One invitation email opened, deleted, permanently erased. The timestamp was unmistakable. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't forgetfulness. Someone went out of their way to make sure no one saw my messages. And the worst part? I already knew who. I could picture Emily standing in the kitchen of our childhood home in Savannah, flipping through mail like she controlled the very flow of communication. She was always the gatekeeper, the one Marianne trusted with appointments, the one Thomas asked to sort bills, the one who screened calls and decided what interruptions were worth it. If something passed through that house, it passed through Emily first. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces aligned in a way that made my stomach burn. She was preparing for her own massive October wedding, 400 guests, designer gown, custom everything. Her entire identity revolved around the spotlight. My wedding, even small and quiet, had the potential to draw attention away from hers, and Emily never shared attention easily. Still, I needed proof, real proof, so I pulled up the tracking receipts. 4 packages, 4 signature-required envelopes, my name as the sender, and their Savannah address as the destination, and the signature at the bottom. One was unmistakable, Emily's. I stared at the curl of her handwriting and felt my throat tighten. She didn't forget. She didn't misplace them. She intercepted them. She made sure no one saw my wedding at all. Cole touched my arm gently. Jenna, what do you want to do? I didn't have an answer. Anger would have been easier. Rage would have made sense. But what I felt was something deeper, something old and sharp, a familiar wound reopening. What do you do when the people you love choose not to see you? Thanksgiving was coming. I almost skipped it, almost let them pretend I didn't exist. But pretending was what built this mess in the first place. So I made a different choice. I went, and I carried the truth with me. Thanksgiving in my parents' house always looked perfect from the outside. White tablecloth, polished silver, a candle flickering in the center like it belonged on the cover of a holiday magazine. But the moment I stepped through the door, I felt it. That old, unspoken tension settling over my shoulders like a coat I never wanted but always ended up wearing. Emily was already posing for photos by the fireplace, her husband, Derek, adjusting her hair like they were shooting a Christmas card. Marianne fussed over the turkey while narrating every detail of Emily's October wedding to anyone within earshot. Thomas poured wine with mechanical precision, eyes already tired as if he were bracing for the inevitable. Not one person asked how I'd been. Not one mentioned the wedding they all missed. I took my seat across from Emily. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. Silence was her specialty, her most polished performance. Dinner began as it always did. Praise for Emily's dress, Emily's venue, Emily's guest list, Emily's connections. Every sentence was a reminder of what my family always offered her without hesitation: attention, applause, presence. And simultaneously, every sentence was a reminder of what they denied me without guilt. Then Marianne tapped her glass. Emily's wedding was beautiful, she said brightly, glancing at her favorite daughter for confirmation before turning her gaze toward me. So, Jenna, when's yours? The table chuckled. Even the turkey knife in Thomas's hand paused, hovering midair like it wasn't sure which side of the family dynamic it belonged to. Emily kept her eyes glued to her plate, too still, too careful, and that told me everything. For years, I would have laughed it off, let the jab slide into my skin where it would linger quietly, but not this time, not after everything they had buried. I set my fork down gently and said, I already had mine, 6 months ago. The shift was instant. The air vanished. The room fell silent. I let it settle before adding, and you got invitations. Forks froze midair, eyes widened. Marianne's smile collapsed like someone had cut the strings holding it up. Thomas blinked at me, confusion flickering across his face. Emily didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't breathe. She knew. "Jenna," Thomas said, cautious, "we never got any invitations." There it was, the lie they had rehearsed without ever speaking it aloud. I felt something inside me settle. Not anger, not vengeance, but clarity. "I figured you'd say that," I replied softly. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table. The glow of the screen reflected in the wine glasses, the candlelight catching its edges like a quiet, waiting blade. Every pair of eyes locked onto it. I tapped the screen. The receipts opened in a neat little list. 4 deliveries, 4 signatures, all marked received. I zoomed into the first one and turned the phone so the table could see. The looping, confident signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Emily. A soft gasp slipped from Marianne. Thomas leaned forward, eyes narrowing in disbelief. Derek stiffened, staring at the screen, then his wife, like he was suddenly realizing he'd married someone capable of erasing a person without blinking. Emily still didn't move. "These were delivered on April 23rd, I said quietly. All 4 invitations signed for by Emily. Dead silence. But now it wasn't surprise, it was exposure. "Jenna," Thomas whispered, this must be a mistake." "It's not." I swiped to another screenshot. "This is the tracking log from the Postal Service. Priority mail, signature required, all confirmed." I paused, then added, "and all intercepted." Marianne shook her head quickly. No. Why would Emily ever hide your invitations? Why would she sabotage your wedding? That's ridiculous." There it was, the sentence she'd used my entire life, polished to perfection. "Why?" I repeated. "Because my wedding was in June and hers was in October." I turned to Emily. "Because you didn't want anyone talking about mine before yours." Emily finally flinched. Her chin trembled with the effort not to react. "That's insane," she snapped. "You always twist things to make me look bad." "No," I said calmly. "You did that yourself." Derek suddenly scraped his chair back and stood. "Emily," he said, voice low, "is this true?" Emily stared down at her napkin. Her breath shook. Her voice cracked. Everyone always acts like Jenna is so innocent. She never needs anything. She never wants anything. She never ruins anything. She just exists and makes everyone feel..." "Feel what?" I asked softly. She shot to her feet. "Feel guilty, feel small, feel like she doesn't even have to try." And there it was, the real confession, not about the invitations, but about everything that came before them. I leaned back slightly. "So, you hid my wedding because what? Because it was quiet? Because it didn't compete with your 6-tier cake and your string quartet?" "That's not..." Emily gasped, but the truth was already spreading across her face like smoke. "Jenna," Thomas said desperately, "we didn't know. If we had known, we would have..." "You would have come?" I finished for him. "After years of missing every milestone, forgetting every birthday, making sure Emily's needs always came first?" He closed his eyes, hard. Marianne's face twisted. "You can't put all that on us. We did our best." "No," I said, "you did your best for Emily. For me, you did the bare minimum and called it fairness." Emily sank back into her chair, shoulders collapsing. Even she couldn't defend that. The weight of decades pressed against my chest, but it wasn't grief anymore. It was understanding. "I didn't lose my family tonight," I said quietly. "I just stopped pretending I had one." "Jenna," Marianne gasped, "don't talk like that." "Why?" I asked. "Because it threatens the story you built? The one where Emily is perfect, Dad is neutral, you're the peacemaker, and I'm the problem?" "No one said you're the problem," Thomas whispered. "You didn't have to," I replied. "You showed it." Derek sank into his chair, watching the pieces of his marriage rearrange themselves into a shape he didn't recognize. Emily whispered, "Jenna, please." One word, soft, frightened, a lifetime of entitlement suddenly cracking. I stood, pushing my chair back gently. "I'm done begging for a place at this table. I'm done pretending Emily's choices don't hurt me. I'm done accepting your silence as anything but agreement." I took a breath. I'm done. Thomas stood too. Jenna, don't go. We can talk. We are talking, I said, for the first time and the last time under these terms. Marianne's eyes brimmed. We can fix this. You can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge, I said, and you refused for years. I grabbed my coat. I felt lighter with every inch I lifted it. Behind me, I heard Emily sob quietly. I heard Marianne whisper my name like a plea. I heard Thomas murmur, we should have checked, we should have asked. But their remorse wasn't mine to carry anymore. I opened the front door, cold air rushing in. I paused, looked back only once, and said the final truth they'd spent years avoiding. You didn't miss my wedding. You chose not to see it. Then I stepped out, closed the door, not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. A clean, final line drawn. For the first time in my life, the silence that followed was mine. Cole opened the door of his car before I even reached it, like he had been listening for my footsteps. One look at my face and he didn't ask a single question. He simply wrapped his arms around me and held me until the shaking stopped. No judgment, no performance, just presence. The next morning, his parents invited us over for a simple breakfast. No ceremony, no pity, just warm food, real conversation, and the kind of steady attention you don't have to earn. Rosa squeezed my hand. You're family here, she said, not because you married my son, because you matter. A week later, Emily sent a long email, therapy soft, apologetic, admitting more than I expected. I read it. I didn't reply. Thomas called every few days. Small steps, careful steps. I let him try. Then, one afternoon, he found one of my wedding invitations buried in a storage box in the garage. He mailed it to me quietly, without commentary. It was the closest thing to a real apology he'd ever given. Marianne never reached out, and for the first time, that absence didn't feel like a wound. It felt like an answer. I used to believe family was something you protected no matter the cost, but standing in my home now, Cole cooking dinner behind me, laughter drifting in from friends who choose me every single day, I finally understood the truth. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shows up, it's who listens, it's who stays. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who never learned how to hold you. If any part of this felt familiar, like this video, subscribe for more stories, share it with someone who needs it, and comment below with your perspective or the biggest lesson you took from this.